You're listening to 94.4 FM, Salford City Radio, the Friday Sports Show.
You're listening to 94.4 FM, Salford City Radio, the Friday Sports Show with your host, Jimmy Petruzzi. Bringing the news from the local area around the world, we bring Salford to the world and the world to Salford. The main aim of the show is to increase awareness and participation in sport. We also are very fortunate to interview some of the world's best athletes, sports people, footballers, coaches, sports psychologists from around the world. We also have a segment speaking to some of the world's most influential people in the field of psychology and related fields who are kind enough to join us with their ideas and share their ideas on the show. Today we have a fascinating guest who is the assistant manager of Wycombe Wanderers Football Club, a fantastic football club, and he's been assistant there for 11 years, I believe, but he'll tell us more about his sort of career there and career in football in general. So, Richard Dobson, welcome to the show. Great to have you on board.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us, Richard. We'll sort of start from the beginning with yourself. I mean, how did you get into sort of football management? Was it, for your football career, or as a progression, or what sort of? How did you get into like the sort of managerial coaching side of football?
Well, I worked with Gareth Ainsworth, who had a wonderful career as a footballer. Played until his 40s, played in the Premier League across all 4 divisions. I was the absolute opposite of him. So I managed to have 3 major injuries between the ages of 18 and 24, 3 cruciate ligament reconstructions, and that was me finished by 25 years of age. That was my football career finished. I'd hardly played in that time, and needed to move on to something else. Fortunately, I'd gone through my coaching badges early on. While I was injured, it was something I'd always been interested in. My dad was a coach at Brentford Football Club, and so I'd always been around that side of the game, and had taken an interest to it very early on. And it just sort of happened naturally. Once I'd finished playing, the people at Brentford knew me there and invited me in to get a job within their youth department, and things progressed. So 6 years at Brentford, and then I got a call to go to Wycombe, and once again working in their centre of excellence, which are now academies, and sort of progressed there 4 or 5 years in the youth department there before the first team manager suddenly needed an assistant and asked me if I'd help him towards the end of a season. We were going towards promotion. I think we had 6 or 7 games left. The assistant manager had left the club, and he said, will you help me out? And I felt that it was a good opportunity to try things at first team level, and haven't really looked back since. So that was 11 years ago now.
No, that's interesting. I've seen a couple of points there, interesting sort of pivotal moments there in terms of, so you get the injury, you sort of turn your attention to sort of coaching. What was that like, Richard, to sort of, to readjust? I suppose it can't be easy for any athlete, sports person, footballer. You've got you're playing at a high level, and then you sort of have to motivate. I wouldn't say have to motivate yourself, but sort of transitioning your career. What was it like for you to make that transition from playing?
Tough. The toughest part was missing playing. I'd done so little of it that probably by the time it came round to moving into coaching and to deciding to quit, I realised that it was the best thing for my body, and you've got a life after football, and you want to have knees that enable you to function with your kids when you're older and go and do that sort of thing. So you get to that point where you make that decision and you know that it's the right one, but it was tough because I really enjoyed playing, I really enjoyed training, and I missed that competitive edge that football gives you every Saturday. So I guess coaching was the next best thing, and albeit whilst you're not directly in the firing line on the pitch, and sometimes you can't have the same influence as you can whilst you're playing. I still had a great opportunity to help others progress and develop, and I see myself very much as a developer of people. Although I'm at the winning end of the game, having come through the youth department and all that entails in terms of developing people, I still would call myself a developer of players and a developer of people even now.
Yeah, that's interesting. And in terms of, say, like going from youth into the first team, what was it like to sort of, obviously you had experience, playing and firstly, all the dressing rooms all about and that sort of stuff. But in just general, I mentioned their development. What would you say it was like to sort of go from youth to the first team? What was the experience like, Richard, to sort of, as a coach?
The big change comes about as you're developing people, particularly at youth level. You can sacrifice results for development purposes. So, I had a really good youth team. I mean, many of those lads that were in my youth team have gone on to play in the Championship and the Premier League and international players. And so we were a strong side. But there were times where we played really well and we might have got beaten. And you come off and you go, the scoreline doesn't matter so much because the progress of these players is the most important thing. And then you go to a first team and all of a sudden the result is everything. And everything is, where you've done it in front of 50 parents on the touchline, all of a sudden there's 5,000 at home or 30,000 at Sunderland or wherever you might be. And so everything is magnified that much more. But I think I'd gone through such a good background in terms of my education, my learning in football. I was really fortunate that I broke into coaching at the very start of the FA rolling out a load of courses in terms of psychology and physiology, and I got into them right at the forefront of them courses. So I had a really good background, and I actually would never swap the time that I spent in youth developing myself and working with psychologists on my own personal development. I think that gave me a really good grounding to get to first team level, and having had a great base to work on, to build on once I worked at first team level from there.
Brilliant. And in terms of assistant manager, for our listeners who sort of wondering what an assistant, there's no sort of two assistant managers that have the same role, but in terms of sort of an insight to your role, we've seen how pivotal assistant managers are in the game of football. You could sort of roll off hundreds of them who've been influential for the first, in terms of for the first team. What would you say your role is as an assistant manager, Richard, for our listeners?
It's quite wide ranging because a lot of it depends on your interactions with the staff that you have. So, as I said earlier, I work with Gareth Ainsworth, and Gareth is a larger-than-life character, very emotional, connects with the fans, connects with the players, and that's his role. He'd be the first one out over the trenches, riding the white horse with a flag in his hand. That's his type. I'm far more strategic. I kind of do my work in the shadows, so I don't really seek the cameras or the limelight particularly. I like to stay out in the background and probably far more subtle in the way that I operate. But I have a great relationship with the players. Longevity has given me the chance to build that, and we have many layers of leadership within our club. We have a system where we have 4 or 5 general players that have been around the club for a long time, that we call them like silent whisperers, so the message filters down from the management staff through these players, and then it just gives us a wider reach in terms of embedding the culture within our club. And those sort of things that are quite subtle, that happen behind the scenes, are not the sort of things that fans would necessarily be aware of that's happening within the club. But it's something that gives the club culture stability for many years to come.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. And so, in terms of yourself, would you say you're more like hands-on as an assistant, where you sort of get out there and sort of coach and other things, or we sort of, like you mentioned, they're strategic? In terms of sort of the coaching side of things, is that sort of something that you are hands-on with?
Yeah, that's my strength really. So I do most of the coaching on the training ground. I really enjoy the tactical side of the game. I really enjoy planning for our opponents and what's coming up. And the sort of week-to-week work, I'm out on the training ground every day. And as we've grown as a club, we've added, we were fortunate enough to spend the season in the Championship, and that gave us a chance to bring on 2 or 3 more staff. So we have a former player of ours. He was at the club, has been at the club for 18 years, which is a great achievement in itself. And he's come onto the coaching side, and he's one that I've taken under my wing because I can develop him and help him in his career. So hands-on. A week, but with an eye on the future and what the club's going to look like in a year's time, 2 years' time, 5 years' time. You should never stop developing the club. Whilst you're preparing for the next battle on Saturday.
Absolutely. And in terms of you mentioned the championship there, what was it like in the championship? I mean, it's a difficult league to get into. We've seen a lot of big clubs sort of struggle to get in the championship, and you guys sort of was a phenomenal achievement. What would you say the standard was like in the championship in general?
It was terrific. I thoroughly enjoyed it. The standard is there's a huge difference between League One and the Championship. Firstly, financially, in terms of the budgets that those clubs hold, and you look at the Championship, and a whole load of those clubs are ex-Premier League teams. So they have players of that ilk, international players every week you're up against. For us, it was a wonderful achievement, the highest at Wycombe Wanderers, a club with a huge non-league background in actual fact. To get to the Championship was a wonderful achievement for us, and just helped us to develop the club a lot more with the finances that came in through that season. The real disappointment was the fact that we did it in front of empty stadiums, because it would have been great to go to these places with packed out stadiums, and certainly at our place, I think it would have been beneficial for us to have our fans. And we nearly pulled it off. We nearly stayed up. We needed one more point would have kept us up, which on the face of it would have been a monumental achievement. Absolutely. Given our budget compared to those that we were up against. But certainly loads learned by the club, and something that we want to aspire to do again. And whilst it'll be tough because of the quality of the clubs, and Sheffield Wednesdays and Sunderlands and Ipswich's in the division that we're playing in, we want to get there again as quickly as we possibly can.
Yeah, that's interesting, and I think we've seen, like you mentioned there, some big clubs who sort of struggling to get into the Championship, and to stay in the Championship. We've seen Premiership teams sort of go to the Championship, and then sort of even go down to League One and so on and so forth. But in terms of, say, I mean, we've the local team here is Salford, and they're sort of I'm sure they're aspiring to sort of play as high as they can in the leagues, but I'm sure the fans aren't under any illusions in the area, and neither really the sort of club owners, or so to speak. But we've seen how tough League One is. I mean, could you sort of describe how listeners, the standard even in League One in terms of week to week is any team looks like any team can pretty much beat anyone on the day.
That's right. Yeah, it's interesting. We have American owners, so they took over the club just before COVID hit, which was looking a really bad investment at that point, because obviously everything had stopped. Anyway, a few months later we get promoted, and I think you get something like £10 million. So then they'd won the lottery, and so it's been interesting looking at it from their perspective. I think in American sport you don't tend to get the same quality of opponents. So I think our football pyramid is really strong. We could play teams in the conference in the FA Cup, and they'd give you a game. And our division is no different from that. We got beat by Morecambe earlier in the season up at Morecambe. They're in the bottom four, and they were good on the day. They played well. So it is a very tough division. But what we're tending to see now is there's almost like two divisions within one. So there's a top 10, and when you look through those 10 clubs, they've all played in the Championship. They're all big clubs, far too big for League One, really. And then there's a bottom 10 where it's sort of 10 clubs that are hanging on and trying to stay in that division. And as the Premier League and the finances within the Premier League get bigger and bigger and bigger, it just drags and stretches everything up through the pyramid. So you're now getting your likes of Norwiches and your Bournemouths that are going to yo-yo between the Premier League and the Championship, and we're starting to get that sort of thing between the Championship and League One. As the finances stretch all those clubs in between. Absolutely,
and like you said before, the clubs like Sunderland, for example, which I suppose you could put Bolton in the mix too, in terms of they had that experience of being in the Premiership and want to get back there somehow. But the first things first, you've got one league at a time, to be fair. And is that, I suppose, for a League One team, is that the sort of the holy grail, so to speak, to try and get in that phenomenal achievement? From you guys, I think it was a tremendous achievement to get there. But is that generally sort of the holy grail? Can we sort of get there into that Championship?
Yeah, absolutely. Just because the difference it makes to the clubs in terms of finances, and I guess the same. It can be said with a jump from Championship to Premier League. They always say that championship playoff game is the biggest game of football in terms of money and what you're going to get. And with the parachute payments, you can transform a club by having one season in the championships, in the Premier League. Sorry. So for us, the championship is similar in terms of the Holy Grail. It gave us an opportunity to build our club from what had really been a League Two club and a bottom end League One club. We're now fighting at the top end, and that's purely down to one season's finances going into the championship, understanding what the championship looks like, and trying to mould our club towards what those big clubs are doing at that end of the game. So, without doubt, everyone's scrambling for it, and once again, the finances, even in our league, with the teams that are chasing promotion and may not even get there, spending what they're spending makes it so difficult. We're still a small club relatively. We get 5,000 fans at home, and you go to Sunderland, there's 30,000. You go to Sheffield Wednesday, there's 30,000. These are really big clubs that are probably at a low ebb in their football life at the moment, but they'll bounce back at some stage. They have to, because of the support that they get and the finances that brings in.
I mean, it's interesting you say, and I find it it's really interesting, really. I suppose for the fans as well. It's how did you guys you mentioned there, 5,000 fans. I mean, you got clubs like that who are getting 30,000 fans, so to speak. And I mean, did you guys, in terms of what give the youth an opportunity to get through? I mean, it's obviously put a strong team together to get to the championship, and obviously got a strong team together. Do you have a blend of youth and players that you can bring in and strengthen the squad? In terms of the youth, do they get the opportunity, Richard, at the club?
Well, we do, sometimes through necessity. So what was interesting is we had a very strong youth system for a small club years back. And as I said earlier, a lot of those players came through and played international football and Premier League and Championship. And actually, those players that came through from our youth system kept the club alive. At one stage, the club was on its knees and looked destined to fall into non-league football. And that was around my early days as assistant manager. So at that point, there was myself, there was Gareth, and there was a physio. That was our entire staff. We had a group of either older journeyman players that had been around the block and were coming to the end of their careers, or a group of young players that had come through our academy system, but with very little experience of playing first team football. And we somehow managed to keep the club up at that stage with these young players. They got then sold on, which kept the club alive in terms of the financial side of it, and we just managed to build slowly but surely. And it's always disappointing when you lose really good young players, because you spend so long working with them, and ultimately you work with them for somebody else's club as they move on. But it's all part of the cycle. So we've always had an interest in bringing young players to the clubs. We believe that we can develop players that maybe haven't quite made it somewhere else, or give them a second opportunity. And we've seemed to have done that quite well over the years. I think the other advantage that we have is that we have a great environment, a wonderful culture at the club that people want to be part of. And we brought in Craig Mackail-Smith, who had been a really good championship player for a number of years, a few years ago, and he took an 80% drop in his wage to come to our club, because he wanted to enjoy the last couple of years of his career and be in the environment. So sometimes that can work for you, where money isn't necessarily what the players are after. They're looking for the environment that might test them and bring the best out in them, that they can enjoy their football. And I think certainly bringing Sam Vokes to the club this season is one of them examples, because he's taken a huge hit in his wages to come to an environment that he had heard about and wanted to get involved in. And he sort of relished being with us, and he's been a great signing for us.
Brilliant. And in terms of your own sort of career, would you say some of the challenges have been, obviously, making the transition to sort of coaching as a player, and just in general, what would you say some of the challenges have been as an assistant manager, or just coach in general, Richard?
Well, I'd have to say, I look at other people in other clubs, and people are given 6 months or 10 months to try and turn a club around, and then they lose their jobs. And I mean, I've been there 11 years, and it still doesn't feel like a particularly long period of time for where we're trying to take the club. But to be able to do that, or to be asked to do that in the space of several months, is just ridiculous. You can't build anything in that period of time. As I said earlier, longevity has given us that chance to build and put a culture in place that you just can't can't do in such a short space of time. So I think for anybody that's you could be a really good practitioner in terms of being a coach or as an assistant manager, but if the manager above you doesn't get results in that period of time, then you're out of a job. And I think probably for me as an assistant manager, the difficulty is that whilst you have an element of control over your job, ultimately the manager makes the decisions, and the buck stops there, and it can be difficult sometimes when you want more control over the future of your career, and that can be tough at times, but at the same time I'm super respectful of the fact that that's the manager's job, and there are times where we might disagree on things, but he makes his decision, and I think all the staff are behind him and respect that at Wycombe Wanderers. So the other thing is obviously opportunity. You've got to be in the right place at the right time, and I know some really good coaches within youth development that might never get the opportunity to work at first team level. I was fortunate that a vacancy come up whilst I was working at the club and got given that opportunity, but I know that those opportunities can be few and far between, and you can be an excellent coach working at youth level and never get a sniff of first team action, and that might be a shame, because there may be some really good English coaches out there that just don't get an opportunity whilst we continue to bring in foreign coaches, particularly at the top level.
Yeah, no, that's a great point, and I think, like you mentioned earlier before, in terms of the education system in football here in the UK is phenomenal, and it'd be great to see, obviously, more sort of coaches given the opportunity, definitely at sort of the Premiership level for sure, definitely. And in terms of highlights, there's been a lot of highlights. You had a hand in producing a lot of fantastic players. The Championship would have been a huge highlight, but what are sort of some of the highlights that stick to mind for you, Richard, in your career thus far? I'm sure there'll be plenty more, but up to this point, what would you say were some of the big highlights for yourself?
Well, I've got to say that the best day was winning at Wembley to get promoted. We'd been through lockdown, we'd benefited through COVID and got into the past few points per game, but I still think there was many people out there that didn't really think that Wycombe Wanderers had a chance, given the strength of the other clubs in the playoffs. What was interesting is that our boys sensed an opportunity, so whilst they were away in lockdown, they worked their backsides off to stay fit, and so it was almost to the point where we were having to tell them to drop down a little bit because they were doing so much, but they sensed an opportunity. So when we came back to prepare for the playoffs, it's far from ideal. Obviously, all the COVID regulations were in, and we couldn't have meetings and limited time with the players and what have you. But they were focused. The players were super focused, and so the detail that went into planning for those semi-final games at Fleetwood, even down to the fact that we said, look, there's no atmosphere at the stadium. There's going to be no fans, so we've got to generate it. And we almost made our away game at Fleetwood in the semi-final like a home game, and that atmosphere came from our substitutes and the staff. So there was a whole load of detail planning that went into that, and then to finally win at Wembley, I think with no fans being there, made it an even more intimate moment between the players, because instead of disappearing off to celebrate with the fans or their families or whatever, they didn't have that, so it just became about us, and we had a really great group, a wonderful group of people. The players there were terrific lads, and so to share that with them, that moment, as intimately as we did. It was funny actually. The cleaners were knocking on the door at Wembley and saying, "You do have to leave tonight. You do realise that." But they enjoyed that moment, and that was great. Other highlights in terms of games, we played Spurs in the FA Cup and give them a real shock. We were 3-2 up in 89 minutes, and we lost 4-3 in the 97th minute. But that was a wonderful game of football. I mean, end to end, and for anybody there. And this season we played Man City in the League Cup, which was a great experience to meet Pep Guardiola and share a drink with him afterwards. They always say, don't meet your heroes, but in this occasion, I've got to say, what a wonderful fella, what a terrific guy. And to spend an hour with him after the game, talking football and life, and was just, they're precious moments for coaches like myself. I admire what he's done in the game. I really love the way his team plays, and to go and witness that firsthand. We actually went 1-0 up, but it was like stoking the hornet's nest. Everyone got angry. Yeah, he got beat 6-1, but what a wonderful group of players and a fantastic experience for us.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, City is the sort of team that, against any opposition, if they sort of click, I guess they, But I mean, at least you guys had a goal. I mean, how do you sort of prepare to a game against City? Obviously, that the team speaks for itself. Some of the world-class players all over the field. I mean, what's the preparation like against City, Richard? What do you guys do if you're going into a game against, say, City, and they can take any team to pieces, really? But it looks like you had a good go against them, to be fair.
Yeah, pray is the first thing. So we watch the footage. We have an analyst that does our opponents and puts a presentation on for us every Monday, and we watch them. And it was just a case of, if they click here, how do we stop this? And it was like that all night. Really, you're just watching the quality and the standard of the players. And I think for our boys, getting that perspective of the difference between League One and obviously top end Premier League, but world class players. I think it was a huge moment for them, just learning the little details that the Manchester City boys have in their game. So it was obviously incredibly difficult for us, and we always thought that we might be on the end of a difficult scoreline. But when they beat Manchester United 4-1 a couple of weeks ago, you look at it and go, suddenly 6-1 doesn't sound quite so bad.
Absolutely, yeah.
They're capable of doing that to the teams at the very top. So I think from our perspective, we wanted to give it a good go there, but we knew that it was going to be a huge learning curve for our club to play against players of that ilk and see what we could take into our own performances off the back of that.
So, I mean, it's like, I suppose it's a learning experience as well, in terms of playing one of the strongest teams in the world, and you're out there and sort of, do you find that when you remember the games against sort of Tottenham City, that like you mentioned there, sort of, rubbing shoulders with the best players in the world, is it like a learning experience as well from a coaching point of view as well, to sort of obviously you've got a lot of experience in the game, but do you find sort of going away from a game like that, you sort of pick up a few ideas here and there?
Yeah, I mean, the funny thing was that I use Man City quite a lot in terms of the work that I do around the edge of opponents' boxes. So they are the best that I've seen at breaking down packed defences, and particularly the way that they play around their opponent's box. So we actually have a ball that we put in from an area, we call it the De Bruyne ball, after Kevin De Bruyne, and I shared that with Pep, which he loved. He said he was going to tell him, but these little moves, I call them winning moves. When we get to that part of the pitch where goals can be scored, can we execute these winning moves? And a lot of what Man City do, we try to copy, and we're not going to get it right anywhere near as much as they do, but on the odd occasion that we do, it might create better goal scoring opportunities for us. So we do look at what they do. We do watch videos of them, and you've got to aspire towards trying to do as much as you can in terms of the way that they do things. We know we're not going to get it right. We know we don't necessarily have the quality of players to execute it on a regular basis, but it's them odd moments in the game that just might win you the game that we're trying to achieve. Absolutely,
and what an experience for the players as well, to play against some of the best players in the world too. And in terms of one of the questions I asked the guests is any advice. Obviously, it's difficult to give any advice because we're all on our own journey. But is there sort of any tips you could give anyone going into management? There's probably not many people more qualified than you in terms of an assistant role, but anyone sort of looking to go into, or maybe just got their first job as an assistant, what are some of the things you could sort of share that might be useful, Richard?
Well, my biggest the biggest influence on me came from psychologists. So as I said earlier, I was quite fortunate. I joined the FA, the first ever FA Level 1 psychology course, and was on the first cohort for every unit after that. So I think there were 5 courses on that, and at the end of it you got the FA psychology diploma. And I found that really interesting. Off the back of that, Dr. Misha Jervis, who was one of the facilitators of the course and a presenter, I've become friends with her. She now works at our club. She comes in one day a week and works on the psychological side and mental health side of the game. So I've learnt a lot from working with her over the years. And I also met another guy, a fella called Keith Mayer, who's working with Liverpool's Academy currently, but has a neuro-linguistic programming background and psychology background, and I did a lot of work with him in my formative years as a coach on my own personal development. So I kind of looked at what was going on at these courses and met loads of other coaches from across the country, and actually a lot of it was much of a muchness. People were doing very similar things, and I looked at people like Jose Mourinho, who were at the time at the top of their game, and thought, what is it that makes him different? Why has he got to the level that he's got to, and other people, maybe even more talented coaches than him, haven't got there? And a lot of it is down to understanding yourself, and so I delved very deeply into understanding me and the way that I reflect on other people, and my body language and my choice of language verbally and that kind of thing, and they were the little details that I don't think we concentrate quite enough on in football. So having worked with Keith and worked on my own personal development, I came through the other side, not just as a football coach, but as somebody that, first of all, you've got to understand the way that you reflect on other people, the way that other people perceive you. And once you understand yourself fully, then you can only truly understand what other people are going through. And I think for any budding coaches, my first thing is, before you contemplate developing other people, make sure you understand yourself fully and the impact you're having on them with your words and your actions.
That's a great shout. That's a great takeaway for any sort of coach listening at any level, to be fair, Richard. I think anyone sort of tuning in and whether they be any sport for that matter as well, I think that there's sort of some key things to sort of take away, that's for sure. But I really want to thank you for your time, Richard. It's been really fascinating speaking to you. No doubt the listeners have really sort of enjoyed it and sort of taken a lot away from what you've sort of had to say, and I've certainly found it really, really fascinating and interesting, that's for sure. So wish you all the best for the rest of the season and and beyond, and thanks again for coming on board the show, Richard.
Pleasure, Jimmy. Thanks very much.
Great stuff. That was Richard Dobson, the assistant manager at Wycombe Wanderers Football Club. No doubt we'll keep an eye on the on the football club. So do kind enough to join us and share some insights into his role, amongst other things around football coaching, management, and just general ideas in the game on Salford City Radio 94.5 FM. Your host, Jimmy Petruzzi, the Friday Sports Show.